I'm glad that I think in the discussion, there's not much discussion about the higher income groups. Personally, if you want to not to let the Gini coefficient deteriorate, to call a halt, the capping temporary, a pause, I call it a pause in increases in the higher income groups, that should be pursued. A pause, remember, is meant as a pause. But in Singapore, our practice has always been not by law, moral suasion. And moral suasion can be very effective, All that needs to be done is MWC say we should have a temporarily pause for higher income groups. Maybe the higher income groups say, let us say, those who earn, say, more than $1 million and above, if they don't agree with the figure that I gave, 15,000 and above, but that is meant only for discussion. They can cap it at, say, 1 million and above, or 500,000 and above, temporary pause, as a recommendation only, It can be very effective. And it has a good impact, because if they continue to have their salaries go up and up, it can have a lot of inflationary impact on the pay of others. And in the long run, it's not in our interest. We can become very uncompetitive. And then society becomes very, very, wage rates become so unequal. Certain amount of inequality in pay is absolutely necessary. There is no society where there is every person receives the same pay. It doesn't work at all. During the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia, they tried. It ended up in total failure. In other words, a few years from now, hopefully, say 4 years from now, hopefully there will be hardly any worker that will receive, say, less than $1,000 a month. That very low pay is not consistent with our very high per capita income. You have read in the press, people say we have the highest per capita income in the world. We are the richest country in the world. But that is so, but we also have a lot, surprisingly and not very comfortably, we also have about 10 to 20% of our population living near subsistence level. And in a very, very affluent, very rich society with such a high concentration of millionaires in the world, they show that we have the highest concentration of millionaires. Don't you think we should also, in such an environment, to make sure that we don't have people who have very, very low income, because they too are Singaporeans, they too are part of us, and it depends on what kind of society we want. And I view, and I think a lot of Singaporeans view, that we should make sure that very, very poor people have can receive higher income. Another way out is for the government to help them, to subsidize their expenditure, and which government has been doing wonderfully. I think I would like to compliment the government for taking on a lot of redistribution function. The government, contrary to some people, what some people think, the government has done marvelously, wonderfully in trying to help the poorer income groups. But in my view, another alternative, another good supplement to this policy is to raise their income so that they don't need to depend on so much redistributed income from the state. Because if you redistribute too much, which means that where do you get the money to redistribute? You have to raise taxes, you know. If you raise taxes, that will make us introduce another important factor into the whole equation. If you raise it far too much, if you're on that track, it's dangerous. And I don't think government wants to go on that track. You become very uncompetitive. Yeah? In some countries, in order, they even go to the extent of indulging in so-called quantitative easing. That means printing of more money. Do you think that's good for us? I don't think our government will ever want to think about that. Right? So that is out altogether. But if you think, go on this income redistribution line excessively, help the poor through the government, one day you have no choice but to go for higher taxes. And if higher taxes have reached very upper limit, you think of printing money like many countries have done. And the result is the exchange rate keeps falling. And the unemployment rate keeps going up and up and up. I don't think we should never even think of that direction. So the sane, rational way is to raise the wages of very poor workers. And that can be done. In Singapore, that can be done without upsetting the apple cart. Because initially, when I mentioned it, some people were shocked that it should be done that. But after some time, they get over the shock. And a lot of people think probably that he is rational.
So if times like able to go back, will you make such an quite?
You mean I'll make the same speech? Yes, of
you
course I will make the same speech, without doubt about that.
Will you make any like amendment or any?
No, probably. I might say instead of having 15,000, I might put it as 50,000, or maybe even higher, in order to make it much more less shocking. You know, I might put it as a higher level. You know, but I use it as more as a starting point for debate. You know, for discussion.
And you achieve what you expected.
Well, semi, not completely. Yeah, not completely. But it's good enough that the country is moving in that direction. Much more conscious about income inequality, to take some measures to raise the income of the low income groups through quantitative guidelines. And these two are the important factors.
So, what do you plan to do? I mean, you retire in June. I mean, officially retire in June. end June. So are you going to continue teaching? Are you going to do more research? Could you share
What
with
do
us?
I do?
You
In my
mentioned,
reply, I say art is long and time is fleeting. And our hearts, though tough and brave, still like muffled drums, are beating funeral marches to the grave. Act in the living present, heart within, and God overhead. Let us then be up and doing with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, still achieving, still pursuing. Learn to labor and to wait. So you ask me what and I'm going to do? Still achieving, still pursuing. Learn to labor and to wait. And I've still, how many more books on my table that are 3/4 or 4/4, 3/4 completed. So they will be completed soon she is my helper. She will help me.
will you be considered like going back to the public sectors to to help as a more like advisor roles?
Not at my age. I must remind you that I'm 80 years old, and as time goes on, you value more and more. You also value private life to yourself, with your family, with your friends, But working has become my habit for the last, I don't know how many years. I've been in the academia for 50 odd years, Yeah, but you can't, habit cannot be changed overnight. The brain still works, functions. And writing is a habit, just like talking and just like my drinking coffee and tea. You can't change. So I will be continuing writing